It is 4E5, and the Ashen lands of Morrowind are facing a crisis. No longer opposed by the Tribunal and their soul-powered repellent known as the Ingenium, the moon of Bardao crashes onto Vivec City. The continent is ravaged. Earthquakes and volcanic eruptions from Red Mountain cause untold death and destruction amongst the people of Morrowind. More troubles await. The vengeful Sexleal will invade as payback for centuries of slavery. The once proud Dunmer, or Dark Elves, are now having their lowest point in history. But it was not always this way. The complex, exotic and often alien culture of the Dunmer is one of Tamriel's most contradictory races. Their history and origins, shrouded in contradictory myths, are as intriguing as their bizarre architecture. Their magical aptitude and myriad religions are notorious as well, and make the Dunmer one of the most refined and versatile Tamrielic peoples. Welcome to our video on the history, culture and religion of the Dunmer. The most important question is, how useful were their tables? Well, it's important if you want to play tabletop games at least, and when it comes to tables you can always stand to improve things by adding a tabletop table, who have sponsored this video. To be clear, a tabletop table is a table you put on your table, or anywhere else for that matter. It provides an elevated surface designed for tabletop role-playing or board games, while preserving the space underneath for all your other clutter. And most importantly, it's portable. The tabletop table neatly folds up into itself, such that you can take it anywhere in a lightweight carrying bag. It's all well and good having games you can take places, but remember you need to guarantee a decent table too. Now you'll always have one quite literally at your side. The table features an accessory rail around the edge to place cards, dice, drinks, whatever you need, and the accessories store away inside the table when you're done. It comes with 4 accessory pieces and can store 8 if you need more. Which brings us to how you get the tabletop table. It's launching on Kickstarter, and if you back it, you'll get a 10% discount on the finished product. Just go to tabletoptable.com/wizards, link in the description, and elevate your play with some more table for your table. The Dunmer, or Dark Elves, are the Marish inhabitants of the region of Morrowind in the northeast of Tamriel. They are also called Ash Elves, pure-blooded folk, and used to be called Morich. The Dunmer have dark grey skin, and usually have red eyes, a result of their magical transformation after the fateful Battle of Red Mountain. The obsidian appearance of the Dunmer is often seen as a curse by other Tamrielic races, and has often made them into outcasts among the other people of Tamriel. Like their Altmer brethren, the Dunmer are tall, and have a lifespan that can span centuries, but they are uniquely susceptible to skin diseases. They tend to be a proud, arrogant and xenophobic people who are hostile towards outlanders. The Dunmer homeland of Morrowind is a vivid, exotic landscape, full of alien flora and fauna such as giant mushrooms, insectoid quama and dinosaur-esque pakguas. As a result of this unique landscape, the Dunmer use completely different animals for transportation. Horses and oxen are rare in Morrowind, with the Dark Elves preferring to traverse the lands on the backs of gigantic, tick-like silt striders. The strangeness of Morrowind's ecology also impacts Dunmer cuisine, which often features ash as a key ingredient in dishes, and considers insectoid quama eggs to be a delicacy. The heart of Morrowind is the island of Vvardenfell, an ashen land with some grazelands and the large Red Mountain volcano in the centre. As of the 4th era, much of Vvardenfell and its great cities lie in ruins. Both historically and in the present 4th era, the last of Morrowind has been contested between the most powerful clans of the Dunmer people. These are political organizations which have mercantile, magical, military and political power, and have risen and fallen in accordance with a game of Mournhold thrones. Alongside the houses, there are also the Ashlanders, semi-nomadic tribes of Dunmer, which have rejected the political developments of Morrowind and scorned the reforms of the Tribunal. This division in Dunmer life makes for intense distinctions. The religions and ways of life of sedentary and nomadic Dunmer are very different, both within and between them. This does not make them any less proud as a people. Indeed, despite or perhaps because of their internal differences, the Dunmer are a highly civilized race with a long and rich history. The question thus arises, what is this proud history and where did the Dunmer come from? To answer this, we must go back to the Merethic era, the pre-history of Tamriel, when the first ancestors of the Elves, or Mer, arrived in the Somerset Isles from their homeland of Altmeris. The Proto-Elves, known as the Altmer, were initially an egalitarian society. Slowly, however, the Altmer became more stratified and religiously strict, enforcing highly doctrinal worship of gods known as the Aedra, who the Altmer believed to be their direct ancestors. This resulted in ideological schisms in Altmeri society, one of which was led by a prophet named Veloth, a nobleman and priest who believed that the Aedra were not to be worshipped and that his homeland society was corrupt, greedy and cruel. Thus, with his followers, called the Chimer, or People of the North, he led an exodus from the Isles and moved to the northeast, to a land which became known as Restine and would later be known as Morrowind. Established in this new homeland, Veloth instituted a new form of worship among his Chimeri followers. Henceforth, they would worship the three so-called good Daedric princes: Azura, the Prince of Dusk and Dawn, Boethia, the Prince of Plots, and Mephala, the Prince of Secrets. When the Chimer settled in Morrowind, they encountered a race of fellow elves confusingly named the Dwarves, or Dwemer, a technologically advanced race who dwelt in great mechanical cities deep beneath the earth. First contact between these two races of Mer was violent, with the staunchly atheistic Dwemer and devoutly religious Chimer becoming quick enemies who frequently warred on one another. These wars continued until the early First Era, when things changed forever. During that year, the Chimer faced the onslaught of the First Empire of the Nords, whose dragon-shouting berserkers carved a path through the east, conquering all of Morrowind except for Vvardenfell. When all hope seemed lost, a savior appeared in the form of the Chimer hero, Hortata Indaril Nerevar. Nerevar defeated the Nords by allying himself with the Dwemer. Together, the two races of elves fought the Nords and repulsed them back to Skyrim. This alliance, however, fell apart when a certain Dagoth discovered that the Dwemer High Craft Lord, Kagranek, had created three tools to siphon divine power from an artifact inside the Red Mountain, the Heart of Lorkhan. The Dwemer intended to use the Heart of Lorkhan to build a god of their own making, a heresy of the highest order that the Chimer could not allow. A long war occurred between the two races, until 1A700, when the Dwemer were defeated at the Battle of Red Mountain by Indaril Nerevar and his closest companions, Sotha Sil, Vivek, his wife Almalexia, and his close friend Dagoth. By the end of the battle, the Dwemer had mysteriously disappeared from Nirn, and Nerevar was dead. Accounts differ as to how he died. The tribunal claims a power-hungry Dagoth killed him, while Ashlander tribes claim his three closest allies, Almalexia, Vivek and Sotha Sil, backstabbed him after he forbade them from using Kagranak's tools on the Heart of Lorkhan to achieve divine power. Regardless of what happened, the Neverine's closest companions did indeed achieve immortality by using the Dwemer's profane tools on the heart of that dead god. For this, the Daedric prince Azura cursed the Chimer into having dark skin, turning them into the Dunmer. 4 of Nerevar's companions achieved godhood through the Heart of Lorkhan: his wife Almamexia, his general Vivek, his counsellor Sotha Sil, and his ally Dagoth. Dagoth was considered a traitor and supposedly killed, while the other 3 supplanted the 3 good Daedra as the true gods of the Dunmer people. So it was that Vivek, Sotha Sil, and Almalexia became the Dunmer's new pantheon of living gods, collectively known as the Tribunal. The rest of the First Era was spent fighting the Cyrodiilic, Alessian and Reman empires, which continued until 1E 2820, when a mysterious Dunmeri assassins guild called the Morag Tong killed Emperor Reman III and ended the First Era. Left to their own devices, the great houses of the Dunmer consolidated their rule over Morrowind under the auspices of their 3 living gods. They expanded on their slave trade, raiding into the lands of the Argonians and Khajiit to take captives to work on their ranches and plantations. The Argonians eventually retaliated by manufacturing the Nahatan flu, a deadly plague which devastated Morrowind and caused destruction all over Tamriel. Morrowind continued to be ruled by the Tribunal throughout the Second Era. Still, the coming of the Akaviri invasions caused some of the houses to ally with the Nords and Argonians in the Liberation War. Together, Man, Beast and Myr pushed the Akaviri out of their lands, resulting in the forging of the Ebonheart Pact, an alliance composed of some Dunmer houses, the Nords and Argonians. This resulted in the partial abolition of slavery in Morrowind. Meanwhile, the Third Empire of Man, founded by Tiber Septim, had conquered the majority of Tamriel and was knocking on Morrowind's doorstep. Rather than fight the invincible Talos Stormcrown head-on, the Tribunal signed an armistice with the Cyrodiils, which made Morrowind an autonomous part of the Empire. Sometime before that, Dagoth resurfaced after a millennium-long dormancy. The ancient companion of Nerevar had not in fact been killed, and now set out to lay Morrowind low by manufacturing the Blight. The Blight was a leprosy-like disease of the flesh, that corrupted all who got sick and turned them into bloated, ravenous monsters. This resulted in the quarantining of Vvardenfell, where Red Mountain and Dagoth were situated. In 3E427, the tribunal lost access to the heart of Lorkhand when Dagoth seized it and tried to use it to power a machine called a Kulakan to try to take over Tamriel. However, Azura had for centuries been trying to reincarnate Nerevar as a new hero, the Nerevarine, and in that year she succeeded. So it was that the Nerevarine, a mysterious champion of unknown race, gender and origin, was sent east to Morrowind to cast down the false gods who had killed Nerevar. There they met with the tribunal and managed a multiplicity of feats in Vvardenfell and Solstheim before defeating Dagoth and destroying the heart of Lorkhan. With the power behind their immortality obliterated, the tribunal lost its power. Sothosil tried to rebuild the heart, but was killed by a paranoid Almalexia, who herself was defeated by the Nerevarine. The rest of the Third Era was messy for Morrowind. The Nerevarine disappeared in an expedition to Akavir, while the remaining two tribunal members became more repressive after the loss of their power. This repression led to the exodus of many Dunmer to places like Cheydinhal in Cyrodiil. Vivek later disappeared as well, and his whereabouts are unknown to this day. In the power vacuum of the tribunal rose the New Temple, an order of priests which revived the Daedric princes of Azura, Boethia and Memphala as deities of worship. During the time of the tribunal, these so-called Three Good Daedra had been demoted to anticipations or precursors of the three gods of the tribunal, and were now revived to their previous status. Meanwhile, Vivek's disappearance was causing issues. His power had been the only thing keeping Bard Dao, a huge celestial rock, in suspended motion over Vivek City. This moon had allegedly been hurled at Vivek City by the mad Daedric prince Sheogorath, only for Vivek to pause its descent with his powers. However, with Vivek gone, the moon was now poised to pick up where it had left off. To stop the moon from falling, the Dunmer used the Ingenium, a machine powered by souls that was given to the Dunmer by the soul-collecting Daedric prince Clavicus Vile. Initially, only the souls of prisoners and other outcasts were harvested, but later more respectable Dunmer were forced to give themselves up to feed the Ingenium. This pattern continued until 4E5, when a Dunmer called Sul destroyed the Ingenium to prevent his lover's soul from being harvested. The destruction of the Ingenium caused the collapse of Bard Dao onto Vivek City. The destruction was immense. The city was nuked, triggering the eruption of the volcano of Red Mountain in what became known as the Red Year. The chaos allowed the Argonians of Black Marsh to invade southern Morrowind, causing mass devastation in 4E16. House Redoran was eventually able to push off the Argonians. However, the destruction was still immense, and many more refugees from Morrowind moved to places like Solstheim and Skyrim, where they faced a lot of discrimination. The Septim Empire also declined during the Fourth Era, and retreated out of Morrowind during this time. The Dunmer, greatly devastated, remained neutral in the Great War between the Empire of Man and the Altmeri Dominion. Now that we have an overview of Dunmer history, we can finally discuss their culture and customs. The Dunmer are a highly sophisticated and cultured people, with their own script and language derived from the Daedric alphabet and Old Elvish respectively. In addition to their large literary corpus, they also possess a unique form of architecture, which varies based on each house and region of Morrowind. For instance, the Mage House of Telvanni grows giant mushroom towers, where levitation is key to transport oneself across the various floors of their fungal buildings. Dunmer arms and armor are also unique due to the lack of wood in the brazen lands of Morrowind. Glass and Daedric armor feature heavily in Dunmer arsenals. The Dunmer are proficient with both magic and the sword, as their teachings from both the Daedra and the Tribunal have made them formidable with both spell and blade. This versatility has made them formidable in politics as well. Morrowind's houses and Ashlander tribes constantly engage in alliance building, assassinations and backstabbing in a way that would make any political thriller seem like a cakewalk. As organizations like the Morag Tong are legal entities in Morrowind, and since large criminal organizations like the Kamona Tong have sway with houses like Hlalu, we can imagine that Dunmer politics spills as much blood as Red Mountain billows ash. Foreigners have a hard time keeping up, and what is considered a tranquil era of peace for Dunmer politics is the equivalent of chaos elsewhere in Tamriel, with the exception of perhaps High Rock. However, that is not to say that Dunmer have no honor. Each house and Ashlander tribe lives by their own strict codes of conduct. For instance, the mages of House Telvanni solve their arguments by ritual combat. while the Ashlanders of the Ushilaku tribe have keen rules that their spiritual warriors must follow. Familial bonds, as well as clan bonds, are important for the Dark Elves, as evidenced by the prevalence of ancestor worship amongst them. The Dunmer are thus not uncivilized, they merely have their own ways of managing art, politics and honor. This honor has made them often hostile to foreigners. For instance, it is well known that xenophobia and haughtiness is an issue when dealing with some of the Dunmer, much like their High Elven siblings. Slavery, particularly that of Khajiit and Argonians, was once common in Morrowind, and this has caused resentment amongst the Beastfolk. However, harshness is not the only trait of the Dunmer, who are capable of sophistication as well. Fashion and stylized elite dresses are something that many Dunmer cherish, and they often use bones and precious gems to dress in both battles and courts. We will now discuss the most complex aspect of Dunmer life, their religion. Due to their tumultuous history, the Dunmer have experienced much diversity and evolution in their religious beliefs. For instance, the Mabragash tribe of Ashlanders have a rite of passage where young tribals go through a snake-filled swamp to meet the mysterious ghost snake, while the Morag Tong are said to pledge themselves to Mephala and possibly the mysterious death deity Sithis. Currently, the Dunmer worship the three good Daedra, Boethia, Memphala and Azura, and oppose the four bad Daedra, Sheogorath, Marunus Dagon, Molag Bal and Malakath. They are organized in these affairs by the New Temple, who have organized life since the collapse of the Tribunal. This religion is what the Dunmer believed when they were the Chimer, before the Battle of Red Mountain. It is also the religion that the Ashlanders followed despite persecution from the Tribunal. From the First to the Third Era, the three good Daedra were seen as anticipations of the dominant religion, the Tribunal. Vivek, the god of lust, war and poets, Sotha Sil, the god of mages and artificers, and Almalexia, the mother goddess, governed the province and managed the affairs between houses. This temple often persecuted Dunmer who did not acknowledge their godhood, such as the Ashlanders, and those who held true to the ultimately fulfilled prophecy of the Nerevarine, who was destined to come and cast them down. During their millennia-long rule, the Tribunal were opposed by Dagothr, who was depicted as the devil incarnate in their religion. Despite their decline in the Fourth Era, the Tribunal are still worshipped by some Dunmer, as is Dagothr. One of the most important parts of Dunmer life is their persistence in ancestor worship. This is doubly intriguing, as the Dunmer do not believe that their dead inhabit the planes of the supernatural, like Aetherius or Oblivion. Instead, the dead are said to live on one plane that overlaps with Nirn's. The Dunmer have family shrine tombs, which can be modest or large, depending on one's money, and where feasts can even occur. They also use parts of their dead for magical purposes, such as when they used the body parts of their ancestors to power the ghost fence against the Blight. Both Ashlander and Tribunal faiths incorporated ancestor worship into their religions. Necromancy is also practiced amongst the Dunmer, with some, like Hals Telvanni, using it extensively to commune with their dead forebears. In general, however, the Dunmer use their ancestral shrines to commune and gain knowledge from the departed. As the book Ancestors and the Dunmer says, "The knowledge and power of departed ancestors benefits the bloodlines of Dunmeri houses. The bond between living family members and immortal ancestors is partly blood, partly ritual, partly volitional." The Dunmer are a fascinating and highly intellectual people. Their long history in Morrowind and beyond has been a testament to their tradition of ruthless politics and skilled artifices. Forever marked by the Battle of the Red Mountain, and ever oscillating between worshipping ancestors, Daedra and the Tribunal, the Dunmer are truly more than the sum of their parts. They are not Dun but Dunmer, the Mer who survive and thrive in spite of their adversity. The Dark Elves never forget their ancestral ways, for good or ill, while also being versatile and persevering despite treachery and adversity. This perseverance is not unlike that of the Neverwhere Reborn, whose perseverance could apply to all Dunmer. From 7th sign of 11th generation, neither Hound nor Gwa nor Siege nor Harrow, but Dragonborn and Farstar marked, Outlander incarnate beneath Red Mountain, blessed guest counters 7 curses, star-blessed hand wields thrice-cursed blade, to reap the harvest of the unmourned house. More videos on the Elder Scrolls universe are on the way. In the meantime, we're planning to cover the battles of many other fantasy, sci-fi and space opera universes, so make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see them. Please consider liking, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely. Our videos would be impossible without our kind patrons and YouTube channel members, whose ranks you can join via the links in the description to know our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our Discord, and much more. This is the Wizards and Warriors channel, and we will catch you on the next one.